Poker's legendary champions, next generation stars, and tireless ambassadors of the game, sharing their wisdom and guiding your journey to high achievement on the green felt. This is Tactical Tuesday on Chasing Poker Greatness with your host, Brad Wilson.
Welcome, my friend, to another episode of the Chasing Poker Greatness podcast. As always, this is your hosts of the show, Coach Brad and Jon. What up, Jon? Welcome to the show.
How's it going? We're doing 3-bet pots out of position versus Regs specifically today. I think this is actually something that gets asked about a lot in the village. Like, requests for Tactical Tuesday is just like playing 3-bet pots out of position. And like your courses have the fish part down, so no need for us to go into there. But like we definitely do get a lot of requests for out of position 3-bet versus Regs.
Yeah, I mean it's a tricky area, right? Like basically in a 3-bet pot, your one or both players' stacks are typically at risk, and you're playing out of position against strong opponents who are going to make good decisions and utilize their positional advantage and not make any clear blunders with continuing or folding. So yeah, it's tough playing out of position 3-bet pots against Regs.
Yeah. All right, so we'll start off with one of your hands.
Yeah, no foreplay. You just jump right into it. Like, let's go. This is the.
Those are my favorite types
Tuesday
of YouTube videos. The ones that just like show me the thing that I clicked on it for. So I'm gonna try to stick to that as much as possible. All right. 200 big blinds effective. 5-10 no limit. Well, I guess I gave it a little bit away. MP opens to 25. Folds around to Brad in the small blind, who has ace of spades, queen of hearts. He 3-bets to $110. The big blind folds, and MP calls. You want to know something fun? I mean, I think this is just totally standard. If I saw anybody do this, I like wouldn't have like raised an eyebrow a couple weeks ago. But in my preparation for playing like deeper live cash during the series, I was studying. I did a lot of work with like 200 big blind ranges, which is like the deepest my solved ranges get. And ace queen offsuit is actually not a 3-bet at 200 bigs facing a middle position open from the small blind.
Really? What is it? A fold?
It's a small. It's a
flat.
Yeah, like small frequency, not small, but like medium frequency flat and fold for the rest. It's like 60% fold, 40% flat, something like that. Anyways,
that I have a feeling that's probably not going to happen.
Yeah, I don't think anyone. That's what I said. Like, I wouldn't like blame anyone for seeing that. I was surprised too when I saw, but it just, I mean, that sort of just goes to, I guess, like the thing that we should take away from that, or if that listener should take away from that, is that when you are playing deeper than 100 big blinds, and when you start getting, at least for online, in the online world, really deep at like 200 big blinds effective, the types of hands that you want to be 3-betting at that depth are hands that make the nuts quite frequently and can make the nuts kind of easily. So a lot of your 3-betting range shifts towards suited aces that can make the nut flush. And you sort of start cutting away at hands like this, like ace queen offsuit, ace jack offsuit, that are very strong just in terms of like high card advantage, but that matters. That starts to matter less and less the deeper you get, because people are they're not stacking off with like ace jack suited on an ace high flop at 200 big blinds effective, and you're probably only stacking yourself if all the money goes in. So anyways,
well, you have a higher SPR when you see the flop at 200 big blinds deep, and I think what you said makes a lot of sense, that there's a lot of preference to like suited hands versus as opposed to offsuit hands. With that being said, it's hard for me to imagine that like flatting from the small blind isn't going to turn a profit with ace queen off, like more so than folding is losing half a big blind.
Right.
Because I think that like when you flat, you have a much higher SPR, and so stacks are not typically in play post flop. But anyway, yeah, I do think that makes sense though. Like fundamentally thinking about the way that poker is played, that the deeper you are, you want to have hands that like can make the nuts more often, and ace queen only makes the nuts when it makes a Broadway, and when it makes a boat. So
yeah. So anyways, this is how we always end up spending like 40 minutes a hand or something. It's because we take like the simplest pre-flop decision and spend 5 minutes on it. So anyways, let's see a flop.
5 minutes in, we're jumping into the action as Jon loves when he watches videos.
This is why we have to
YouTube.
start the videos like, we can't like have the foreplay 5 minutes because we do that. It'll just take forever.
Yeah,
Anyways,
we dilly dally.
Ace, ace, deuce, flop, 2 diamonds, ace of clubs, ace of diamonds, deuce of diamonds. On the flop, Brad, again, for the podcast listeners, ace of spades, queen of hearts. So super good flop for both our range and our actual hand. Brad starts out with a 1/3 pot C bet. I like that a lot on these paired flops, especially the ones that highly favor you. I think on like a low paired flop, like a 3/3 deuce flop, you could definitely start thinking about using larger sizes and maybe playing a strategy that includes more checks. But on ace ace deuce, I think C betting for a third is the way to go.
Yeah. So despite us not being able to flop the nuts, we flop a pretty good hand. We flop pretty close to the nuts with our ace queen. So yeah, bet a third, villain calls. Turn is the 10 of clubs. So board is ace, ace, deuce, 10 with 2 diamonds and 2 clubs. There's 365 in the pot, and we're 1900 effective. Thoughts here on the turn, Jon?
I think you could go one of 2 ways. I would go one of 2 ways on the turn. I think the simplest strategy to execute on the turn would be to check your entire range once you get called on the flop, and just continue with the hand that way. I think the other way to play your range is that you can really push your ace x advantage. Presumably you have way more stronger ace x than your opponent does, and kind of bet big with hands like ace king, ace queen on the turn, and also pick from whatever bluffs you want to also bet big on the turn with as well. I think that's it's a dicier strategy to execute. It's definitely going to be harder, and it's going to be I don't know. I think they're
riskier.
Yeah, they're 2 risks. One is that you bet too thinly for value. Like I think going 2/3 with a hand like ace 5 suited, for example, would be a mistake. The other thing is that it's probably really easy to under bluff and like only bet your ace x and like start checking like, I don't know, king jack of spades or something like that.
Well, when you bet, you also risk playing for stacks too, right? Like you make it a possible 3-bet game where they can raise turn and jam river.
Yeah.
And I don't know that. Yeah, I don't know that we have a lot of hands in our range that really want to play for 200 more big blinds here compared to the villain who, they're going to have ace deuce suited. They'll probably have deuces. They'll have 10s, and they have ace 10, ace deuce, 10s, and deuces. So like they have a lot of boats in their range. We have 10s full, and that's kind of it. Like maybe some low frequency ace deuce, but we don't really have deuces full. So I think villain has like more nutted hands in their range than we do.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's probably a little bit closer than you made it sound. Like, I don't know. We still have quads. We probably have the same number of ace 10 suited, assuming you're 3-betting those.
If you have,
would not expect villain to have ace deuce suited. Deuces, yes, but ace deuce suited, I think that's a little bit too wide of appeal. But maybe people are doing that. Also, we have an ace, so there's only one combo of ace x suited left.
200 bigs deep. You're folding ace deuce suited in position, facing a small blind 3-bet from MP. Look at this guy.
Yeah.
I can tell you there's like there's a 0% chance that I'm folding ace deuce suited here. Like we're gonna realize positional advantage, and we're gonna play deep.
All right.
But
so what's your strategy here? Like what are you doing? Are you checking range? Or are you?
Yeah, I'm checking range.
Yeah.
I think betting is too risky because, like I said, I don't have many hands in my range that want to play for everything, and I think villain has more hands in their range, and also like it just is difficult to play versus a raise. And so checking, I think trying to play for 2 bets or 1 bet is ideal for what I want to do. If the turn checks through, then I get to bet the river. Villain has lots of bluff catchers. And if villain has ace X, like they can also value cut themselves, right? Like they can, if they have ace 5 suited, they can just go big because I don't have a ton of ace X in my range, and I've got like a lot of king, queen, and kings, queens, and jacks. So I think that like, yeah, they can go big with like ace 5 in position here versus a check, I would think.
Yeah. Also, I think there's one thing that we didn't really talk about was Checking ranger gives our opponents a chance to stab with hands that would just snap fold facing a turn bet from us. Like, I don't know, really obvious one that comes to mind here is a hand like 4-5 suited. Probably just folds if we bet, but very likely to stab the turn if we check. So yeah, that's just another added benefit to checking in the spot.
Maybe even their pocket pairs too, right? Like maybe
pocket
three
sixes.
trays, 4s, 5s, 6s, 7s, 8s, 9s. Just want to play for one bet too.
Yeah, that's true. All right, so you go ahead and check your trips, and our opponent stabs 1/3. This is like total clockwork. This is exactly what I'd expect to happen. Like, I feel like you can almost rely on this 1/3 stab. We've talked about this before on previous Tactical Tuesdays, where I think this happens all the time, and Brad doesn't think it happens as frequently as I do, but not surprised to see this 1/3. Yeah,
I think it happens. I think the in position 1/3.
Yeah, I think I said it happens all the time, and you were like, you know, we looked at the data and it wasn't. It was like 25% of the time or something really small. I just don't know how my sense of reality is so different from
population can be very different. Like, I think that the data reflects a specific type of opponent, and Ignition may be playing their ranges differently, and so they may have like a data read here that like whatever people perform poorly versus this 1/3 in one way or the other, and that may be why. It's hard to nail it down, but I mean, I do think that like on Ignition, villains will stab a third here facing a check like very often. I don't really know like what to make of it. I don't want to raise again because I think raising, it's just kind of overplaying my hand. So basically just check calling here with the ace queen.
Yeah. Are you gonna have any raises?
I don't think so.
Okay.
No.
Yeah, I think that's the way to go if you're gonna flat these sorts of hands too. All right, so you flat the 120. The river is 8 of hearts, so the final board is ace, ace, deuce, 10, 8. 2 flush draws brick on the river. There are $607 in the middle. Both players still have over 1,800 behind. Brad, I assume you're starting out with check once you take this line on the river.
Correct.
And then our villain in the middle position comes out with a 133-ish% pot bet. Pretty big, pretty chunky overbet here for $843 into 607. I mean, I assume you don't really have much of a decision here. What I guess like one thing, this is sort of something that I do before I know I'm going to call is, what sort of hands do I expect to see take this line from villain? So like if I lose, what sort of hands should I expect to lose to? And if I do win, what sort of bluffs do I expect to beat? I assume for this size, we're never beating value.
I expect to lose to deuces and tens a lot.
Yeah.
I think maybe 8s if they stab the turn. But basically the boats that don't have an ace, because those hands, I think those hands have a preference to go much bigger here because I have more aces in my range. Like when they have an ace, I don't know that they necessarily want to choose this specific sizing.
Right.
So like hands that do not block the ace that are boats are the hands that I expect to see. And then the bluffs, I'm not exactly sure. I mean, it could be like, you know, a bunch of king queens, queen jacks, king jack suiteds that miss, like back doors or front door flush draws. Could be hands that are turning themselves into bluffs once we check call the turn, believing that they don't have enough showdown equity anymore and they're better served to turn themselves into a bluff, right? So I would say like if we're counting combos, they probably have 6 to 9 combos of boats, and then, you know, the bluff frequencies are found through all those things that I just said, you know, the busted gut shots, back doors, busted floats, hands that turn themselves into bluffs. And yeah, we're getting like close to 2 to 1. So we don't need to find many bluff combos in order to call the river. So I think the villain, I don't think they're probably supposed to have a hand like ace jack or ace 5, but it wouldn't shock me if they just had like ace 5. Like I wouldn't be like totally shocked that they're choosing like a super polar sizing here. Maybe trying to get called by like kings, queens, jacks.
Ugh. I would be surprised to see ace jack or ace 5. I was like on board with everything that you said up till that point. I think like the boats make a lot of sense. And you know, just infinite bluffs to pick from, at least from our point of view. Yeah, again, like I would be surprised to see ace jack or ace five take the size on the river. Like again, I said this at like right at the beginning of our river conversation. I don't think we beat value when our opponents pick this size. But yeah, I mean, anyways, I do like the size though. Like I think when you have sorry.
Well, what I think it's very easy in situations like this to sort of project how you would play your range or how we think about hands, and other people think differently, and maybe just like in the moment they think that like I've got a large high concentration of bluff catchers and kings, queens, jacks, and maybe like jack 10, 10x, and they just decide to go for it with ace jack or ace 5. What I'm saying is like I wouldn't be shocked or surprised to see it. Like it would just be like, okay, they just got like too greedy and overplayed their hand. I mean, and I think that like you will see it occasionally. It's like low frequency, low percentage, but I think that you will see it if you played this hand until the end of time against, a spectrum of villains, that you are going to see ace X some percentage.
Okay. Yeah, I can get on board with that.
But yeah, I don't really have much of a decision here. I don't think I can check raise. Like we said, not going to see ace X often enough that merits check raising. So, but clearly you can't fold ace queen here. You just gotta call.
Just bet a third, check call the turn, and fold the river. That would be.
Like, we said that villain has, 9 combos of boats, and this is 6 combos right here of pocket sixes. Like, so for the podcast listener, I called the river, took down a $2,200 pot, facing pocket sixes. If they just have sixes in full, I can bluff catch profitably. That's how like razor thin you can call rivers because of the pot odds model.
Yeah, I think this hand, like seeing the hand that that villain had, really just it drives home the point about like the way you played the turn and the river, and just like having a protected range when you check the turn so that you can call down in these spots and have very strong hands on the river that can call the overbet. I think like for beginner poker players, like it would be really easy to just bet all your ace X on the turn and then check just your kings, queens, and jacks, and then you get to the river and face the overbet, and you're like, well, I mean, I don't know if I can call here with like kings, queens, jacks. But when you do protect your range the way the way that Brad did in this hand, it sort of gives you these very natural call downs, and you're not getting bluffed by pocket sixes, which I think this guy going for it with pocket sixes versus just like the average player in the pool that checks the turn is like, it's like, I see his plan. Like he's trying to fold out like kings, queens, jacks, on the river, at least, with this big bet. And I think it works a lot versus, especially versus players who aren't as good about protecting their checking range on the turn and river as you are. So, I think on the surface, this hand looks really wacky when you see the pocket sixes, but I really do see like what this guy was going for.
And I can see the flip side of it too, of like, do they bet a third with their boats, right?
On
like,
the turn?
Yeah. I think that they are going to size up with some of their boats some of the time. So they don't have all the boats in full here on the river. Like I don't think they have 9 full combos, because like sometimes when they have like 10s full, they're just going to go for it like 2/3.
Right. Just
they're
try
not
to get
just
the
going to
stacks in on the river. Yeah.
Yeah, I would think so.
I also think that like that's another reason that I would be surprised to see like ace jack or ace 5, because I think those hands, similarly to the boats, would be very tempted to go big on the turn. It's like, oh, look at all these flush draws and gut shots I can rep. Like kings are just going to have to call a big bet on the turn, like if I go big, because like I could have diamonds, or I could have queen jack of clubs or something like that. So I'm just going to go big with my ace x2 and like figure it out on the river, basically.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think villain most definitely has multiple sizings on the turn. I would imagine. And cool. So we got this hand in the books, ace queen, checking the turn to protect our range. And coming up after the break, gonna play another 3-bet pot that Jon played this week. So stick around after the break. Check it out.
You survived pre-flop boot camp. You've shot the fish in a barrel. Now, prepare yourself for the feeding frenzy. A comprehensive strategy for gutting every fish in your player pool. Data-driven hero bluffs, light call downs, and perfect value bets. that are maximally designed to hurt some feelings. Feeding Frenzy. Available now at chasingpokergreatness.com/feeding frenzy.
All right. Welcome back to this episode playing some 3-bet pots versus Regs in the Ignition 1K pool. Jon, since you want to dive into the content without any foreplay, why don't you start breaking down this second hand?
All right. So same game, same setting as the hand from Brad's hand a couple minutes ago. 5-10, 6 max cash. We are significantly less deep. The button opens here for $20. I'm in the small blind with 10-9 of clubs. I'm going to be pure 3-betting this hand versus a button open. I assume I make it 90. Yep. Big blind folds and the button calls. So we are 90 big blinds, 91 big blinds effective with the button. The flop is ace 4-3, 2 clubs. I have 10-9 of clubs, so I flop a flush draw.
It's ace 4 deuce with
sorry.
2 clubs.
Ace 4 deuce. Yeah, my bad. I was foreshadowing the turn. So I start out with a small 1/3 pot c-bet here. Going to be doing this with all of my range, I think. And the button calls.
All right. I don't think much to discuss here.
Yeah.
The turn is the tray of diamonds.
Yep.
So we have ace of clubs, 4 of spades, deuce of clubs, tray of diamonds. So now there's 4 to a wheel on the board. A 5 makes a straight. Jon has the 10-9 flush draw. There's 8. There's 313 behind, and stacks are 848 remaining. So SPR is like almost 3. I assume you're checking range here. This is just not a great card for us on the turn.
Yeah, so in game, I assumed that I'd be checking range on the turn. Like looking at the hand afterwards, I actually did have a question about this turn spot and whether I should be carving out a betting range here. The only 5x that I have, which is the only value that I would want to be betting, I don't think I'd even be betting like top set in this spot. The only 5x that I have is ace 5 suited when I 3-bet out of the small blind. That hand does want to bet the turn for sure. Does it want to bet it enough that like I want to carve out a betting range for that hand and then like add in some bluffs? I assume like 10-9 of clubs would be like one of the slam dunk bluffs if you are going to bet the turn.
I can't imagine you having enough like value in your range to bet. I mean, Villain's got deuces, 4s, and trays and 5s, and you don't have deuces, trays, 4s, or 5s in your range.
Right, but I wouldn't be betting deuces, trays, 4s. Like even if I had them, I wouldn't be betting those sets on the turn. Like I my only value that I'd bet on the turn would be straights.
Yeah, I mean,
which I have 3 combos of.
Yeah, you have 3 combos of straights and no other hands.
Yeah.
So like I would check range.
Just check range. Okay.
Yeah, like Villain just this card is just so much better for them than us that like I can't imagine us getting to have a betting range.
Yes. Okay. All right. I'm on board with that. I just was curious whether you thought it was worth exploring, having a betting range on the turn. Guess
not really.
Yeah. So we check. Villain picks interesting size that I'm not used to seeing. He picks half pot. Again, like in Brad's hand, I would expect to see like a small bet if this turn gets bet at all. I don't know. I thought the size was a little bit strange, but again, I'm just getting too good of a price. Getting 3-1 immediate with a bunch of money behind the flush draw. So
I would actually, I wouldn't be surprised to see like a 2/3 bet on the turn by Villain, considering they've got so many strong hands. Like they can just bet all their 2 pairs, all their ace 5, all their 5-6, all their sets, and then also their club draws and their backdoor spade draws. Like basically just going polar, I think makes a lot of sense from Villain's perspective. So I would expect a big bet here on the turn. Not really the half pot size. Like I would imagine, I would just expect like a 2/3 or 3/4 bet by Villain. But
okay. Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense, actually. Going to revise what I said about expecting the small bet. I do. I think you're right. Like the strong hands here, do you just want to bet bigger? And like he has just so many strong hands that I'm never going to have that like you can polarize with bluffs pretty easily in this spot too and put me in a tough spot.
Yeah, the half pot maybe like, I mean, it may be signaling something,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
that they choose the half pot instead of the 3/4.
Right. I think it does signal because like I really just never see Regs use half pot on the turn in these 3-bet pots. I was just really surprised to see this size. Just happy that I'm getting a good price.
I know you're biased because you know the result of the hand, but I mean, what do you think it would signal? Like, what hand makes most sense choosing half pot over like 3/4?
I would say like weaker value, like sets and 2 pairs, and then like maybe it's like slightly easier, like more comfortable to bluff for like a half pot size than it is to, go for the big size with club draws. I'm like
I think
already
there's-
struggling to find like bluffs that aren't club draws. So
I think there's one key component of their range that wants to use the small sizing or the smaller sizing, the half pot versus the 3/4, and that is that they have an ace. Like somehow they have an ace, because then they're blocking your continuing range. They're blocking your value. And if they're blocking your continuing range or blocking like your ace kings, ace queens, ace jacks, ace tens, then they probably are less inclined to polarize.
gotcha. And okay. Yeah, I'm just like struggling to like get on board with that strategy, mostly because I probably would not be betting those hands on the turn. Like,
Well, let's say you have ace deuce, ace tray, ace 4, ace 5.
Sorry. Oh yeah, the 2 pairs. Yes.
Yeah, I'm saying like villain, if you have ace deuce, ace tray, ace 4, ace 5, like for one, the small blind's likely drawing close to dead, but two, they have less of a continuing range because you have an ace. So the incentive of their hand is to choose a smaller sizing instead of going polar.
Right. Okay. So what you're saying is you think that this sizing shift, assuming it's a size down, is indicative of how would you categorize this range? Like slightly weaker or slightly stronger than the 2/3
Stronger.
quarter size?
I would say stronger because I think the 2/3 range has a lot of bluff components to it.
Yeah.
I think this half pot probably doesn't have as many natural bluffs, especially if they have two sizes. So I think the half pot is stronger than the 3/4.
Okay. All right.
And with that said, like you have a flush draw and you're getting 3-1 here on the turn. There's actually the question of like, should you even call the turn with your 10-eye flush draw?
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, just looking at the immediate odds, it looks like it would be fine to call. The one thing I'm not factoring in are kind of like my reverse implied odds for when he, a lot of his most natural bluffs are going to be club draws. A bunch of which are, I'm just drawing dead against. I guess like the other natural part of his bluffing range is like a hand like 6-7 of spades or something, or like something like that, maybe. Even that's like a little, it's getting a little bit out there. Having like spade that doesn't include a 5 or a 3.
Well, how often? What odds do you need to call the turn with the flush draw? Gonna put you on your pot odds on the spot.
Like 4-1.
Yeah, it's like 4.5 to 1.
Yeah,
You're getting 3-1.
Yeah.
Like you mentioned, we don't know how clean your flushes are.
Yeah.
We also don't know whether villain's like gonna be inclined to just bet the river on like a flush completing river with like ace deuce, ace 3, ace 4.
Right.
I mean, if the river's a jack of clubs, do they value bet? I don't know.
No.
So I think it's pretty close. I would lean towards folding personally the turn.
Yeah.
Which is interesting hearing me say that I would fold the turn in a spot where you don't fold the turn, but doesn't happen very often.
What about raising?
No, I don't like raising.
I mean, explore all the options and make sure that
I'm purely just calling with like my 5x here. Like I'm just because I mean villain can have, like you said, like 6-7 of spades or king queen, queen jack, queen 10, king 10 of spades, like some sort of 7-8 of spades, backdoor spades. Like we don't want to raise and fold out their natural bluffs. We want their bluffs to keep betting to try to fold out like ace king, ace queen, ace jack.
Sure, like our 5x region doesn't want them to fold their natural bluffs, but our 10-9 of clubs region wants them to fold even 6-7 of spades, I assume.
They do, but I think villain's got a large availability of value. Like,
okay,
all the 2 pairs, the straights.
It was a totally hypothetical. I wasn't serious about raising. So Anyways, I do make the call that Brad wouldn't make. So, we get the 3 of clubs on the river, pairs the board, completes the flush. The board is now ace deuce 4-3-3. I river the 10-eye flush. I assume I'm just checking range here, which is, I don't know, that just goes into like what Brad alluded to on the turn about how like I'm going to be checking my entire range on the river regardless of whether I make a flush, and it's going to go check a lot. So can I even count on implied odds? Do I even have implied odds?
Yeah,
make up for
you need to
that?
win 225 here.
Yeah,
That's the 225 to make it like break even.
I need to win an extra 225. I thought I only had to win like an extra like 155.
It's 4.5 to 1. You're getting 3 to 1.
Oh,
so
right.
yeah, you need 225 on the river to.
I round down to 4 so I could get to call more often.
And that's for break even, by the way. That's like that. We're trying to break even here. We're not talking about profiting. So the river, Jon calls the turn. The final board is ace of clubs, deuce of clubs, 4 of spades, tray of diamonds, tray of clubs. So there's 4 to a straight. The board pairs, and Jon completes his flush. And starting out by checking.
Yeah, it's really funny because like, like you said, like, there's definitely reverse implied odds here, and we don't expect villain to bet, worse hands super frequently on flush completing rivers. When I checked the spot in game, I was sort of hoping that villain checked back. I was like, at least I don't want to face a big bet on the river because that's going to be tough. What
do you do versus jam?
Not a good. Yeah, I know. That's what I'm saying. It's like just it's you're right. Like I probably should be folding more seriously consider folding the turn, because like this spot sucks if he bets big. If button bets big.
Yeah, I don't know that you can fold. I think you just have to call, but it does not feel good. At all. Luckily for you, villain bets the 190.
Yeah.
I
see this size, and then I'm like, oh man, am I supposed to raise versus this size? Like, let's think about this.
So think about it. Think about it out loud on Tactical Tuesday. What do you think?
Okay, so for us to raise here, we would need villain to stack off with worse hand and a 10-eye flush. Does he have worse flushes? Yes, there are 8-high, 7-high, 6-high, 5-high flushes that are certainly available.
Well, 5-high is a straight flush.
Yeah. Yeah, okay, that's true. It is a straight flush. So we don't want him to have the 5-high flush. Actually, that's a good point. We don't even have. Yeah. Okay. I don't know. I'm not sure that villain stacks off with the 5. Once the flush gets there and the board pairs, like I'm gonna have a handful of combos of boats here and just like way better flushes than 10-eye flushes to jam for value. Yeah, it felt too thin to jam the river even versus this size, which felt
what
very,
would
very
your
tight.
what would a bluff be?
Here? Like ace 4, I think.
Ace deuce.
I don't have ace deuce, but I have ace 4 suited. Oh, for him or for me?
For you.
Yeah.
I mean, at least like instead of thinking about like what you have in your preflop range, I mean, we want to look at this from villain's perspective, right? Like, do you have bluffs in your range, and what bluffs would villain perceive you to have? So like ace 4 and ace deuce, I think, are the two. Those are the hands that that villain can find, and you've got 3 combos of ace deuce, 2 combos of ace 4, so 5 possible bluff combos that you can find. I don't think that is enough. Like if you're jamming aces full, I imagine, right? So like you're jamming aces full, you're jamming ace tray, and you have 2 combos of ace tray. I mean, already you're under bluffing just right there.
Yeah. I agree with that. I think another way to like kind of phrase the point that you're trying to make is, if I jam this spot, what hands would I expect villain to stack off with? Like, how tight do I expect the stack off range to be? And I would only expect boats and like maybe the nut flush, or like, top 2 flushes or something to be a stack off range, right?
Agreed. Yeah. I think it's too thin. Kind of funny that like we get in the spot and like we make our hand and we're still, we still don't meet the threshold of implied odds. We're still, we don't get to 4.5 to 1 on the river, but
wish I could raise to 260. or whatever.
Yeah,
Stupid.
225. Yeah, raised to 40 more. I see your 90, and I make it 230. You call the river, and villain shows up with the ace 5, which to me makes all the sense in the world. I think, like I said, we're both biased because we know the result of the hand before we started analyzing it. But I do think that like that 50% turn sizing probably means something. Or maybe it means nothing. I don't know. I'll leave that for the podcast listener to discern for themselves. But yeah, villain has the ace 5, which is a hand that makes all the sense in the world, and I really like the way they played it. So good for them, and bad result for them. Another one, chalk another one in the win column for the luck box.
For the Pure Life River.
The Pure Life River. Yeah, with that said, that's it. That's our show for this week. We're going to be having a special episode coming out in a couple of days about the future of Chasing Poker Greatness CPG Wolves launch in either December or January. So subscribe to the YouTube channel or wherever you're listening to podcasts and check that out. And that's all I got. Anything left, Jon?
See you next week.
See you next week.